My agenda.
1 minute,
So on my end, we're ready.
I got it,
whenever
right.
You are?
okay? Is it 5?
Not yet, it's 4:59.
Maybe give 1 minute.
now.
What was it, 5 now?
I've really been here, you final rest.
Oh,
Okay.
you know,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a different organization.
Okay,
Perfect.
here we are, call the meeting to order. Everybody is here. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will open public comments at 5 o'clock. Current bills payable. Motion to approve the payment of the bills, manifest 3017.
So moved.
Okay, Duncan, second.
Yep.
Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of paying the bills?
Aye.
We are now entering the budget work session of today's meeting. Mary?
Do you want to check and see if there's any public comment first?
Sure. Any public comments?
I'm still bringing it up here on my end, but
Okay,
it doesn't appear to be any here.
okay.
Okay. So I have a list of reductions for the board to consider. I think it's important for the public to recognize that there's been some conversations with the leadership team of the board. As we prepared the budget, when we started the work, it was at 12%. We got to 7.82. I put out an initial, some thinking that might get it to 6.05. In conversations, really trying to maybe get closer to a 3%, or what does that look like, was encouraged. And so tonight I bring before you some things for consideration. And I think that probably the focus of the evening on what this would mean for how we provide services and opportunities for students and for staff would be helpful to kind of go through. So I have a spreadsheet here that I'm hoping is of a big enough print for you to see.
Never big enough.
Got my glasses.
I got mine.
That's the tree.
This is posted on our website under school board, additional materials for this evening. So we're trying to make sure that we are making that available for other people so that,
So we can hand this out?
yes,
Okay.
please share.
Sorry. Come on up. I'm available. Thank you.
So what might be helpful is actually in your budget book, there is an overview. If you can turn to page 6 of the overview. Because the first 5 items on this spreadsheet are really, Mrs. Holiday, we need to leave that open. It's a public meeting, so you always leave that. So if you turn to page 6, I don't have copies, I'm afraid, but it is on our website under school board. I think it's worth taking some time because these are things that need to happen, but I've provided some ideas of how they might be able to happen in a different way. So the first one, line 1, food service. We are at a point that our food service is no longer self-sustaining. The reality is we are not allowed to have a food service program run in the black. We do need it in the black. We're not able to have one run in the negative. So the school district is responsible for making up the lost revenue. We're predicting that to be at $55,000. That I am suggesting the board consider. $75,000 have been put in the current year's budget for a single restroom. We've had some conversations about maybe looking at our campus in a bigger way, the facilities, and maybe looking at potentially down the road, a bonded project that might be able to take on some more significant upgrades. And so that $75,000 may be better spent at this stage being set aside to absorb that 55,000. So carrying that forward as fund balance with a specific purpose of food service. There's a little extra. We have incorporated CPI training. And what I would say is that is coming in higher than we had predicted. And so the difference might help us absorb that cost. CPI training is verbal de-escalation and nonviolent crisis intervention training, which is something we've incorporated into the student violence prevention and management program. Health insurance. Last year, we found ourselves in a similar situation of trying to find ways to bring down the overall increase. There is a health funds reserve. It's called a reserve versus a trust that are set aside. The current balance of that is $80,754 today. What I would suggest the board consider, we don't seem to need it in the current budget. Again, we have positions that were open that have helped us to absorb some costs. So I would recommend that the board consider reducing health insurance by $80,754 with the plan, if needed next year, to use those funds. We are coming in with health insurance at 15.7%. Last year, we came in at the guaranteed maximum rate of 7.1. I don't know we never know until we know. But there's always the potential for subscription changes. They can go up, they can go down, as well as that GMR can come in lower. So having the reserve, reducing it by 80,000, having the reserve, but maybe again, being in a position you don't need to use it would be a fine position to be in. This one is tough, 2 bus routes.
Facilities before that?
My apologies, thank you. Facilities site work. So Laker Lane is in need of some repairs. And we have been trying to keep in the budget $125,000 to do site work improvements. We've been trying to increase accessibility on our campus. There's clearly areas that are, from ADA compliance need attention. That is in need of some repairs. So what I'm going to suggest the board consider, $126,000 have been that is probably only a third or so of the cost. And so it may make more sense to repair our road and look further down the line. Again, if there was either a capital volunteer people donations, capital donations.
Capital campaign.
There we go. That's what it is. Capital campaign. That might be something that could happen. It could also be part of a bonded project, potentially, something to consider. Now the 2 bus routes. So the reality is we have not had enough bus drivers. We are able on many days to combine bus routes. It is not the best service. Right now it's incredibly unpredictable for families. What we would be doing is looking at going from 13 routes to 11 routes. And the way to do that would be to take the big step back and look at all the routes and see where you can find, are there new ways to create some efficiencies with 11 routes. The reality is our ridership right now is about 300 students in the AM and in the PM. The reality is we seem to be able to do it given the fact that we don't have enough drivers. It might create a more stable system because at least we're not going to always be running short. Things that could be impacted, we've tried to keep bus routes under an hour. We have some that start before 7, but we've really tried to keep them starting at 7. There are some that are just so far out that requires a 6:40 pickup. This may have an impact on that. We won't really know till we create routes. Creating routes is a lot of work. I think it's the kind of thing that we don't want to actually create the routes until we know there's a decision to reduce the buses. But changing patterns can be challenging. Right now, we accommodate a few seats to the Meredith Public Library. I wouldn't see a change of this, but we do accommodate to the community center, the after-school program. I think we could still maintain that, but the library, again, it would depend on whether there are seats open on the route that goes by the library. In the past, we've been able to accommodate dance studios, like if there were events after school. But we have not been able to do that this year based on the lower number of drivers we have. So those are just kind of things that, again, have been services I think people have appreciated. When you get tighter, those are the type of things that are more of a luxury and not something that could be sustained necessarily.
Question, Mary?
Yes.
I believe it was recently I was told that we don't pay for what we don't use with our bus company.
So
If that is true, and there would logically be some excess in that line item
So
at the end of the year.
we will have some excess, but what does happen are extended hours.
Mhm.
So sometimes it's not always a clean, this is what the savings is.
But there may be some residual
Yes.
at the end of the year. Thank you.
So playground, we need to create some greater accessibility for the Interlakes Elementary School playground. Sandwich needs some work as well. And it's, time for us to improve some elements on the playground so that all students have access, not only to use the equipment, but also to get to the equipment. And so what we would be looking for is that $150,000, which is money that had been set aside for the locker room improvements. I think what we looked at is the locker room is a bigger project and probably would best be served as a bonded project. And this might be a way to kind of get ready for more of a shovel-ready or close to shovel-ready type of project. The other piece that I know that Ms. Hill is working is we did have a very generous donation from a former teacher of $50,000. And I believe the goal is to try to also incorporate that into the playground. So those are some things to think about that could accomplish these savings. Some of them would be things that could continue to be accomplished. Bus routes would be, again, a change in service.
Mary, was that the Taffy McQuiggan?
It is, yes, and it's nice to make sure we honor. It was a very generous gift.
I agree.
It might be helpful, maybe the board, because these are decision points, maybe it would be helpful for me to stop talking and the board either can ask questions or have a discussion amongst yourself if these are directions you want to go in.
Mary, do you believe the food service item, it was self-sustaining? We contracted with somebody else. They came to us after a period of time and said, it's not working for them.
So there's a couple things with the food service that we're not in a position to, I think, not be prepared for. But I think there are opportunities to look at the contract. I think there are opportunities to also, the threshold for, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but districts can now qualify if you're 25% or above for free and reduced lunch for everybody. It's something different. It used to be a higher threshold. We weren't able to do it this year because if you had collected any free and reduced lunch applications, it made you've basically voided your opportunity. There are things that we are trying to learn about because that number, if you're not collecting free and reduced lunch applications and getting that information, you still have to figure out how you collect who may be having, economic challenges, because that drives other numbers for grants that are entitlement grants like Title I and Title II. So Ashley and I are working on trying to learn a little bit more about it. My hope is that we won't need that 55,000. The reality is during COVID and we had free and reduced lunch for everybody, we were generating more revenue. That change, and also a change in provider has definitely, we've not recovered from that. But we definitely are committed to trying to find a better way to do things, but we don't have that answer right now. And if we run short, we're going to need some way of being able to meet that obligation.
Any questions? I'm trying to take this all in. It's a lot.
I'm interested in the bus route issue, because we all got letters from someone in Sandwich who was concerned about, the bus route as it is right now. I'm gonna sound like one of those, I walk 5 miles to school every day people, but we went to a gathering point where the bus picked us up.
And we do try to do that.
Yeah.
It's
and-
more from a time standpoint and
Uh-huh.
also mileage standpoint. There's a lot of benefit to that.
So I would guess that there are ways to make reductions in the number of bus routes if parents are willing to do that. That would not be over an hour riding on the bus, but would also give some efficiency. So I do think there are probably ways to work that out.
I think having reduced bus routes in my past, in much, in a larger area, although we cover a lot of, what I should say is a higher density area.
Yeah.
We cover a lot of square, miles,
Mhm.
and it's time, right? Things are long, but it is people recognizing it's a change. The reality is bus service is not meant to be a door-to-door valet service. And it's recognizing that there may be consumers of the buses who are
Absolutely.
not pleased with
Yeah.
the way that things change.
But it's an enormous driver of our cost, and I think it's something we're gonna eventually have to deal with. And this seems like a prudent step to build in savings.
Especially since we can't even get enough bus drivers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And for me, that's attractive in the sense that it's at least stability. The fact that we are combining 7 and 9 are combined on this ongoing basis that feels very cathartic. And, parents not knowing, is the bus arriving today at this time, or is it, we've been trying to do a lot of communication, and I want to commend our front offices who have worked very hard to communicate out with families. But it's still it just feels just cathartic is the only word I can come up with, that it is really unpredictable. And maybe the reality is there's not enough drivers. Maybe having less creates more stability.
There's benefit to being able to complain about something once, but then get used to it versus having
Yes.
to complain about
Right.
something regularly.
I think they would have an app so you could track like bus number or whatever. You know what I mean?
You could
As a
certainly
parent.
have that if you
Expensive.
wanted to pay for that.
Right, yeah.
That service
You can
exists,
find
but
my
it is
iPhone. Come on.
expensive.
That's right.
No, but it's like.
No, but it's
Very
enormously.
good.
We looked into that.
You can track everything.
And this is just extrapolating on what you're talking about on the bus routes, and that is that it will inevitably push people to drive their children to school, or to have students who have a car and a license to carpool. That brings in a liability issue. We can't endorse something like that, can we?
So we are not, we will not be endorsing that we have families start setting up their own private, that
Sure.
the
Yeah.
school is condoning. Families can certainly make that decision all on their own. How people get to and from school is their choice. We are required to provide bus service at least up through, I believe it's 8th grade. And certainly combining so that we have K-12 busing was a way of creating some economy there. So I think we have right now about 300 riders in the morning and 300 in the afternoon. I'd say that's it's not, we've been like 360 in the past. It's a little lower than we've been, but
But so's enrollment.
we run events every day, getting, with the car traffic, dropping people off for school and picking up. I mean, they are events. You think about Meadowbrook and how they have, we do that twice a day. So I would say it's, I would anticipate it would stay about 300. I don't think I'd see much, I don't anticipate much of a change of that.
But a lot of parents do, like when my kids were coming to this campus, I live 7 minutes away.
Yep.
And if they took the bus, it would have been like close to an hour because the bus goes around, right? So I decided just to drive, but not everybody can drive because they have to get to work.
Did you just drive your children or did you
Just
drive
my
other?
children.
That's really what I did.
I've also had parents say I could drive my kid, but my kid enjoys being on the bus.
Well,
So-
God bless you.
It's a social thing.
It is the most unstructured time in their day.
I congratulate you on finding these. I do think that I could support all of them, and I think particularly the issues about the bleachers and the bathrooms, and I think we would be absolutely right to say those are capital projects that can be funded in a different way, and they don't have to impact the operating budget. So I think congratulations for getting it down as far as you've gotten it so far.
I think everybody's, I want to really commend the administrative team who's worked very hard to try to find ways to do some savings.
And thank goodness for the bond possibility.
And friends who know me would cringe if I said this. I'm only afraid that we've cut bone.
We've cut bone.
Yeah.
What I will say is,
On these things that are on page 6?
I know.
Well, I mean, if we step back and we'll talk about this as we go, 100% of the increase in the budget over last year falls in 2 places.
Right.
2 places.
Mhm.
So to find that, we have to look at all the other places and just be careful not to cut bone.
I think that's good advice. But maybe the first 5 to kind of think about them.
Well, I would just add my voice to Nancy's. I can support what's on page 6. I think while it's a concern looking throughout this entire process to not, as Mark says, cut bone, but these are reasonable measures that still provide a service and respond to these really onerous challenges that those 2 drivers have put our budget into a real hole. So I support what's on this.
So I think our hope budget based on that, and then bring that back for Tuesday night so that you'll have kind of clean numbers to work with at that point.
So do you want a motion to accept these that are on page 6
I
to
think if
start
the
with?
board is prepared to do that, that would be helpful, then we can move forward with them.
I'm happy to make that motion that we accept what's on page 6.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Yep, all those, any discussion?
I have a question, I guess, the Laker Lane item, can you explain that a little bit further? We have money for bleachers, how much money do we have for the bleachers, and we're not gonna use it?
126,000
So we're gonna repurpose it,
to work on Laker Lane.
so how is that a savings?
So that is not a save. Well,
Okay.
what it is that money is in the budget right now. The $125,000 is in your budget, is in the proposed budget.
Right.
So the proposed budget in front of you would go down 125,000, but the work for Laker Lane would still happen. It's money that has been encumbered aside for the bleachers. The board would need to make an official motion to take it off of bleachers, to repurpose it to do for the site work on Laker Lane.
Is that also in the budget? The Laker Lane piece is also in the
So
budget?
right now,
we'd be
in the
swapping.
proposed budget that you have, so no, the $126,000 was money that I believe it was like the 2021 or 21-22 school year that you had encumbered and set aside.
Yeah.
So
But Laker Lane is
is in your proposed
in
budget.
the proposed budget for this coming year, so we're just taking the money from a fund that has not been used yet
Right.
because it hasn't
Correct.
been, and putting it there. Does
Right,
that
and
make
then you
sense?
can reduce the bottom line of the proposed budget by 125,000.
When was the last time we redid Laker Lane?
So Mr. Swanker, do you want to talk a little bit about Laker Lane?
It's the original still, so it would have been 91. 91 was the last that they did the additions on that campus.
Is it worthwhile also talking about the
Entry portion
turnout
was
there?
overly short.
Wait on that.
This is, they're talking about from the parking lot down to the elementary
I think
school, right?
more towards the hill,
Yeah.
past that overlay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion. Any other questions on that?
Is there more?
Is there more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we go over more
Yeah.
later, or?
Oh, if
We're
you
just
would
talking
like
about
And we're
to,
just
to
voting
just
on
keep- go
the
through
We're
all
just
of them?
voting on the six
Yeah.
right
Okay.
now. That's,
It's more to just, because there's a lot of moving parts with that one. The others there aren't offsets.
So, so to be clear, Mary, and I think Mr. Baker might appreciate this, these reductions will bring us down to 5.98,
6.05.
6.05.
Okay.
So we're gonna do it in piecemeal, you're
We're
saying?
gonna vote.
I think the rest, I think probably some chunks. I think the next group would be a chunk that is more materials and stuff like that. The last group to look at involves people,
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, so the 5.
the 5.
So numbers 1 through 5 is what we're voting on
Correct.
right now.
Yeah.
So, is there any more questions? All those in favor?
On the first 5.
The first 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next group I'd like to look at, how about we take it all the way to line 18? So we're gonna go 6 to 18 as a group. So, we had originally, if you recall, we had New York City was a, part of our tapestry for grade 8. That got disrupted during COVID, when we kind of regrouped and we had some changes of, staffing at the grade 8 team. It was determined that a Boston field experience actually aligned well with the curriculum. And so there was consideration of maybe doing an extensive Boston trip, maybe keeping it like doing an overnight like we did New York City. We have scaled that back at this point because we did a day trip last year for Boston. Stick with the day trip and reducing the Boston field experience, which was at 40,000, reducing it by 25,000 to 15,000. Looking at reducing regular education supplies by 20,000, and I do just want to, because I think it's important, I had done some previous work with the administrative team. Those supplies had already been reduced by, let's see, $10,000 between ILES and the middle high school, because larger sizes have a little bit more of an economy of scale. So that will ultimately bring us down 30,000 in our regular education supplies. What we don't want is our teachers to be trying to make up those supplies. So it will be learning to live within the means that we have. I don't want someone to have to pick that up, other than, we may look to see if there's any donations or something that somebody may be willing to make. So that's reducing another 20,000. Assistant coaches, we had budgeted, the reality is we have sometimes more kids come out and we create more groupings, particularly at the middle school level. We have not ever turned anybody away who wants to play. The reality is, if we reduce these particular funds, we may find ourselves that we only have X amount of money. There's X number of teams. There may be something that doesn't run. And that's difficult for us to predict at this point because, desires and, change as we go through from one year to the next. But we will, we'll try to seek volunteers to assist, but it seems like a prudent savings for the budget. But there may be a change in the service people are used to receiving. High jump mat, indoor sound system and Hall of Fame. So our high jump mat does need replacing, but we will delay that. So we're proposing an indoor sound system. The quality is poor, but we will make do. And then Hall of Fame, reducing funds to do recognition for the Athletics Hall of Fame. The next one is lawn care. I think dandelions are beautiful. I hope you do too. So we are looking to reduce some maintenance or contracted service regarding lawn care. Sandwich Central School, we would keep, we were looking to potentially extend that position to year round. Just stick with the 205 days. That's just over $9,500. I want to thank Ms. Hill for her wonderful conversation and the outreach from the Geraldine and Fountain Memorial Fund, who has, called and said, what can we do? And so they have in the past sponsored the Naturalist in Residence, which is a wonderful partnership with Prescott Farm. So they will be picking up that $7,980. So that can come down. Co-curricular, looking to reduce, these are supplies, reducing $7,500 from the, or reducing to $7,500 from $15,100. Looking at actuals as well as trying to be, I think if athletics are giving some things up, it makes sense to have co-curriculars give up some supplies. So those are supplies funds. Grade 5 added a new field experience this year, I think it was this year, looking to reduce that field experience. Technology, we would replace equipment by $5,000. Office of the Principal, reduce supplies by $4,500. Library is painful to do, but looking at actuals, reducing $2,500. And libraries, books, $4,500, excuse me, and supply lines, $2,500. And some of that was looking at our actuals. And again, we would have to live within the means that we have. So I think a lot of that is about materials and some field experiences that the board may want to consider.
I'm interested in whether the principals feel that any of this is cutting bone.
Do I get to go first? Let's see. I think, speaking directly to Sandwich Central School, I would just like to say out loud that Lucy Cunningham in her first year is doing an amazing job, like really amazing job. We have functioned at a 205 for since, as far as I know. Would it be good to get her some more time in the building and working directly with me? I think it would be great. However, I think we can survive another year as is. Supplies, regarding Office of the Principal, I think that all depends on how things get split up. It's one of those things you just kind of don't know until you're in it, what you're gonna need. Nobody likes library books. Okay. But I think like Mary said, we can maintain it within our means. So is it bone? No. I mean, are we getting close? Library books is getting close in my opinion.
Yes.
So.
I was gonna say, I love library books.
Team is being
I think nobody feels good about cutting library.
Yes, sorry, that's came across the wrong way. I think when we're cutting library books, we're getting close to that.
I think I'd echo a lot of what Jeremy said. I think that, we worked hard to to prioritize things that would have the least amount of impact on students. And I feel as if this is my third go around with this type of budgeting season here. And we've been fortunate to have had such incredible support every single time. And I think have access to, you know, very generous supply lines and access for our books and our library books and even, you know, for athletics. And I think that if this is what, you know, if this is what we need to do, we will make do, and we will be fine.
I could only echo what they've said.
Okay.
Would it be nice to have all that money back? Of course, but we have to be realistic.
So does anybody want to make a motion?
I have a question.
What are we gonna call this group that goes from 6 to 18?
6 to 18.
Greg has a question.
Supplies and
That's okay.
Go ahead.
No, I guess on the library, I mean, you know, the question I have is in the future, what is the future of our libraries? Is it really to have books? Or everybody has a computer or a tablet now? Are we going to more of a digital world with the library books? What does that mean to the budget in the future?
So I'm gonna say
very
we need
far.
mixed access, and I don't know, I don't wanna put you on the spot, Mr. Heyman. Do
We'll
you
be on
wanna
the spot.
talk about it a little bit?
Absolutely put them on the spot.
Hi, Tim Heyman, I'm the middle high school librarian, coming here, with our representative, Sandwich as well. Mary's point about having mixed access is incredibly important. However, when given the chance, to every patron that comes looking for a book, is like, I'm sorry, we don't have that book, but we do have access to it in a digital format, they say no thanks. The tangible component to it is incredibly powerful. It's an interactive tool that is readily accessible. It is what our patrons are craving and what they want. However, the access to things like digital media to support our special education population as well with programs like SORA and the New Hampshire Digital Collection is important as well, because those digital access points allow us to grow a collection that we don't have to share with the rest of the state, and that have read-along capacities that bridge the gap between struggling readers and active readers.
I would just speak to, I think physical books instill a love of reading and a love of learning in a way that digital media doesn't. And whether that will someday in the future change, but right now, kids with books is something that I support.
But is that an age appropriate thing?
Yeah.
Younger kids need the books, older high school students are more into the digital world. Do we see a transition by
No.
age?
No, across the board, in a 712 building, the patrons prefer a physical text.
Okay. Thank you.
It pains me to put this, I felt an obligation to try to get to the 3%. Certainly, may be comfortable with a different decision. I think this is just an effort to be responsive to the conversations that have been had.
I think Amanda's point is well taken. We've been, as a series of communities and as a district, we've supported the schools generously over many, many years. And this is a lean year. This is a hard year where we're gonna have to hunker down and hope that it gets better and respond to what's in front of us, which is these soaring costs. And again, I see these as justifiable, rational things. And we're gonna go to our communities with a number, and the number is gonna have major repercussions to how long and how supportive the communities are in the future. And these are hard, but there's a world where there's much harder decisions that are pushed upon us. And I support libraries as much as anyone, but I don't want to have a community respond by saying we're going to put up barriers with hard numbers. So again, I can live with these as they've been presented.
Do you want to make a motion, Duncan?
I'll make a motion to
Call it Group B.
Group B.
Group B, which is 6 through 18.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next one is roof deferment. Initially,
Mary, just
I'm sorry.
interrupt that. What's that number for group B, total savings?
It's 6 through 18.
6 to 8.
No, no, no,
Mrs.
what's the
Dollar
dollar
will
amount?
calculate
Total
that.
number, let's go.
She'll
Oh, the
calculate
total
that.
dollar.
Total dollar amount, right?
Do you want the percentage for just that group or the dollar amount?
Just the
The dollar amount would be helpful, both maybe, but
Those will go low enough.
I was gonna say, these are not the big numbers.
$144,080.
Thank you.
You're
Do you
welcome.
wanna, and group, the first group was, that is
It's 5,567.
$556,754.
Can you give us a budget increase including these two tranches?
So percentage wise, you're at 5.6.
With the first one and the second one, we're now at 5.6.
You were at 6.05 before.
So for facilities, initially we talked about trying to potentially use the expendable trust. The reality is we have some boilers that we're putting off, but our hope is that next year we'll be budgeting for them and that there won't be any issues between now and the time, hopefully that a voted budget is approved and we have the opportunity to do that work. But it's wise for us to keep the expendable trust, which is just over $300,000+ available should there be an unexpected emergency breakdown.
The only thing I would add is that 9 years ago, we changed and added solar as a generator. We had wood chip boilers. Is it the wood chip boilers we're talking about, or are we talking about the heating oil?
The heating oil, and I'll let Mr. Swanker, who is far more equipped to talk about it than I am. I'm not allowed to touch the thermostat at home.
Well, my question would be, Brian, is what you would replace it, considering what we have in the chips and the solar, would it be equal to what's already there in the oil boilers, or would it be scaled down because of the changes we've made?
No, it would be equal to, we use the solar and the pellets in tandem with the last original, it's a 3 million BTU oil boiler. And it's the same in each location. They're the same era, 91 edition era. That's where everything is from. They've been repaired. They're massive tanks, and there's no redundancy from that because the old oil redundancy was removed with the pellet boiler.
Thank you.
But it's
I know
not
that, yep.
It's just not a perfect redundancy. And right now, if the oil boiler would go down, it's not perfect redundancy, as I said, so it wouldn't carry the full load. So
Well, the shoulder seasons cause problems too.
yeah, it's a major lifeline of the whole system, and it's just at its life cycle. That's the only reason, really. It's not a wish list or anything. It's just that should be our system. That's the fuel type that provides when it's the deepest of cold months and the heaviest of load on the building. That's what kicks in and goes.
As a follow-up to that, and to a comment that Mary made about bonding versus operating expenses, as an economist, I would always argue to match your liabilities with your assets. And therefore, if that replacement boiler is expected to provide 20 years, it really belongs in the bonding portfolio.
It may just be the timing of that, I don't know if you, again, looking maybe at a more global look of the whole, of all of our facilities and what kind of upgrades would be needed in creating kind of a bigger project, that is probably a few years away, that maybe you would be bonding something. I'm hearing that, we're not in critical need, but we're getting close. And I don't know if you would do a bond just for that,
You wouldn't want to do it that way.
No.
you know, so that may, I just think it's the timing that maybe,
Well, that's the question. If
Yeah.
we put a giddy up on
Yeah.
the boilers, that's subject, unless they fail.
Right.
That's subject to our decision.
so.
So it's just number 19 that we're talking about.
So we're talking, so 19, we went from a roof to a boiler, and so, boilers. So we are not proposing using any of the expendable trust to do this. We are proposing keeping 117,000 in the operating budget, but reducing it, what's in the proposed budget by 83,000, so we won't do as much. And maybe, do you want to describe what the roof part is?
Sure, yeah, we, for the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years, we've been doing about $200,000 to $300,000 worth of roof replacement. And so, this year, we were gonna hold on a large replacement, but do more refurbishment at the middle high school. And I think what we're deferring here is just some areas that I think we can, like with the supply lines, just we can get by and not do them right now. The 117,000 is like an active leaking point that we should refurbish now. And so we're hoping to keep that in. So it's really just reducing square footages of roof that does need to be refurbished at the middle high school. And then in line with keeping that number, there's one full replacement section at the elementary school that would be on the docket as well, that we would cycle. We're trying to cycle the buildings every other year, square footages, so it wasn't $600,000 of roof work. So we're putting that section off. Those would be, if if a leak occurs, we repair it, smaller numbers. But still trying to carry some kind of larger refurbishment area. And again, this 117 is an area of active that needs to be refurbished.
That makes sense.
So I might suggest, because the other items are different, this is a facility piece, if the board wanted to make a decision about that.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we calling that C or?
Yes, we'll call that C.
Keep consistency here.
The next, so we have not been fully staffed with paraeducators since COVID. And honestly, that has helped us in terms of unexpected special education costs. It's helping us in terms of our current budget. We, based on what are the positions we currently have hired, as well as the contracted services that we are will have in the district, we are suggesting that a total reduction of 9 FTEs. This is 3 more. We had put 6 in initially, and we are proposing 3 more be added, and that the reality is things cannot change, and that may very well happen, and we may need to use the special education expendable trust if that was to occur. But at the moment, these are positions that there are no people who are attached to them, and it doesn't make sense to carry those funds when we've had to increase our contracted services significantly as well. So we are proposing that that the line, that 3 are reduced. They're just over $40,000 a piece, at $121,176. The next one is summer school. This is another one like library books.
I feel like this
You
is
wanna
where
do
we're
that one
getting,
separate?
yeah, I mean,
Let's do that separate.
there are a lot of letters in the alphabet. Let's do them separately so we can
Okay,
treat them separately.
okay, so you want to,
I would make a motion to,
paraeducators, letter D.
letter D.
Is there a second? Any further questions?
Yeah, I guess I do. So this is gonna impact which buildings?
I'm sorry.
Which buildings?
Which
does it
buildings
affect?
So we will, So we will have to look at our current staffing, look at where our student needs are, and staff may shift from building if necessary.
Okay.
So it'll be student driven, where the students are and where the needs are.
And our expectation is that now we'll contract this out through the special services maybe?
I'm sorry?
We'll contract this out through special services possibly?
Because of some students with very specific
Yeah.
needs, rather than having paraeducators, we are having BCBAs and much higher
Skill
degree
level,
of service.
Yeah, okay.
So our hope is that this will balance out.
But that's already reflected in the budget.
Correct.
That's the
Right.
driver.
Correct. Correct, but there's, rather than keeping positions that we haven't been able to fill and doing, it's taking up a lot of room that, right now, there are nobody's attached to those.
Yeah.
And that makes it, I think, an item that's worth considering.
Okay,
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
thank you.
Okay, summer school is the next.
No, we
one.
gotta
We
vote
gotta
on
vote
that.
on that.
Oh, all those in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Summer school.
Summer school, let us.
So maybe before summer school, it might be helpful to just a reminder that there is a contract for the support staff contract, which is about $700,000 for year one, which I think is 2.5% on the over from last year's budget to the proposed contract. So something to just keep in mind. Summer school.
Before we get there, Mary, I feel like summer school all the way down to 25 are all pretty related. But the special education 26, that's a new position for that was originally two. And then after discussions the other day, Mary figured that we could cut that back to one. I think that seems pretty straightforward. Maybe you want to speak to that?
Sure, so, we spent a lot of time as an administrative team. This is, the reality is a lot is being asked of our schools, a lot of significant needs that are demanding of a lot of special services as well as management. What we have concluded is ILES definitely moving forward with the proposal of a student services coordinator. The complexities and how we utilize all of our services needs greater management. We have, after a lot of conversation, decided that starting with that makes sense. But we may come in another year and ask for one for the middle high school as well. But it will give us an opportunity to see how that provides relief to the system and to meeting everybody's needs, supporting our special educators, supporting our special education students, and maintaining the effective model to manage our resources well. So we are proposing, it's difficult, this is hard because there's clearly plenty of work there, but I think it's a good interim step. So that is for your consideration.
And there aren't reductions in the contracted services for special education between this year and next year. Maybe I missed that, but my sense is that those are not being reduced. Those
No, they're increasing by over $1 million.
Right, so it's not as though we haven't
There's been a
very
lot of support.
generously supported.
The needs
this
have
need.
the needs have driven the support.
Absolutely, right.
And we are fortunate that, we are working with a contractor who's working hard to make sure that those are supported. I do want to say Lisa Holiday has been amazing. This certainly has been a very difficult year to start as Director of Student Services. She is, there are days, well, many days, that she's actually doing special education teaching and serving as an RBT. So part of that is so that we can have our buildings run in a safe way, student needs can be met. And that's what the student coordinator will assist with that. The reality is there is a lot that happens in student services that requires the ability to not be the person doing the direct direct work because you need to be managing all the resources in a different way, as well as all of the state compliance and so forth. So we need to get out of that model. But I think one will at least start us in that direction.
And while we still have all those contracted services,
Correct.
right? Because
Yes, yes.
my perception is that those should be diminishing over time as our own staff takes on some of that.
I think I would be cautious of that. I think the reality is we are in a position that we are internally providing what is often considered an out-of-district placement. So I think we have some needs that are very intensive, that require very intensive support. I think there are some that with more RBTs on staff, with pieces in the contract, that we may not need to be looking for additional help. But I think there are definitely, we have students with very significant needs that require very significant services.
That's an interesting way to frame this, Mary. That's really helpful because I think explaining this, the cost of out-of-district placements for these kids, be interesting to do an analysis of, but the cost of
They're pretty
out-of-district
comparable.
placements, especially in a place like New Hampshire when there just aren't those resources and they're far away, right?
And that is a big, I think one of the struggles in New Hampshire is there are very limited programming for students with such significant needs. Sometimes they become residential programming, which is a very different scenario for families.
And much more costly for the district.
And I think that also, the reality is that we do lose some economy of scale when you have significant need A and then there's significant need B, but they may not be able to be combined to get an economy of scale. That, maybe an out-of-district placement that has a similar profile that they're looking for students they're bringing to their programming. They're kind of specialized, so they get a little bit of that economy of scale.
Yeah, that is helpful to say we're providing an out-of-district, essentially an out-of-district placement in district. So thank you.
I have a question, if I may. So were the other two sections of positions, they have not been able to be filled. They've been hanging open for a while. But this doesn't seem to be along the same lines. So by removing this position, do you perceive that this would be somebody that we're actually not going to hire who probably would be hired?
So
is it an easily filled position? I'm asking.
So we started with proposing two. So two open positions of student services
And
coordinators.
both are new.
So both new,
Right,
both
they're
new,
so you don't know,
nobody
but-
is currently hired in them. So do I think we would attract somebody? I do.
Okay.
I think I think we would attract.
Okay.
But, what we're proposing is to stick with just one to start with. But I guess what I'm asking the board is maybe in future years to be open and receptive to continued conversations in this area.
You have it. I don't know if this is the right time, but generally speaking here, and again, I would echo Duncan's comments to you, Dr. Downing. I'm really heartened by everybody willing to pitch in. This is a tough year. But that being said, there's some light at the tunnel, provided we don't have some crazy thing happen. We have this big jump in special needs this year. We have opportunities to get revenue next year, but it's gonna take till next year to see
Correct.
those revenues. So,
Right.
but at least the pipeline starts to build.
Correct.
So
Just for the public, that's reimbursement for services that would be provided that is
Yes.
classified as revenue.
So, yes.
I mean, I just want to be
Yep,
clear as
you
we're
are, so
discussing this.
it's 3.5 times the state average, which is just over 20,000. When you hit that threshold, you can then apply for, they used to call it catastrophic aid, now they call it special education aid. And what you're over, you won't get $1 for $1, but you may get 80 cents or 60 cents on the dollar. And it does come in the year after those funds are spent. So we have to budget them now. But next year, you should see more revenue because we're, tracking at this stage, we hit those thresholds. And then during next year's, the 24-25 school year, we'll be tracking all of those contracted services. And that also, it's not just contracted services, it's our own speech providers, it's our own special education teachers. All of that has a value attached. So we will apply, and then that money would come in the year after to offset the amount to be raised by taxes. So it will help. So I don't know if you want
Well,
to.
Duncan has his.
No, I was just gonna offer a motion to support this plan of,
Would you want numbers?
Wait, number 26, special. And that, we're gonna call that E.
okay, I guess, yeah, okay. Yeah, I offer that as a motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So where are we at, Ashley, now? Or reduction or increase? Reduction in the increase.
So you're at 4.41%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Language?
So then we skipped summer school. Do you wanna do
You want to
this?
go back to summer school?
That's a tough one.
Well, let's go back to the end of the summer school. Let's go to special ed salaries.
So this might be, again, there's a natural attrition point. We have a retirement in special education. We had added in the spring an additional special education teacher for programming. That was not budgeted. With this retirement, it would set us to the same staffing level we were at for 22-23 for special education teachers. So it's a natural attrition point with the amount of services that we've added in, adding a coordinator at ILES. We will have to figure out how we distribute all our staff in terms of where student needs are, but we would, recommend that be considered this evening. We also are we're very concerned about our current 6th grade. We've been concerned for this class for some time. 7th grade will be a significant transition point for them. We will be looking to potentially use IDA funds to have 2 special education teachers at grade 7. IDA funds are grant funds, so they wouldn't be district dollars. So we are proposing that we not fill that position.
But it could
When would
be-
that IDA,
Yeah.
when would that decision be able to be made?
So we typically get those funds the beginning of July. Well, you have a kind of a sense of how much you're going to get. So in the spring, we would be able to advertise and prepare for those funds. I'm not concerned about that. That is
So-
something that we.
I guess, given that level of comfort, this reduction that you're suggesting now is something I'm comfortable with, and I would move to support that,
Is there a
to
second?
reduce through natural attrition, 1 special ed teacher.
Second, finance. Any other questions on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
So I'll call that F, I guess. Okay, and then do you wanna do the 2 world language teachers?
So that is 1 FTE combined. I didn't know if the board wanted to consider potentially, phasing of reduction. Phasing it would allow for maybe beginning language for 2 languages. Or if you consider a full reduction, we may want to consider going to 1 language and get economy of scale with being able to have fuller classes.
this is eliminating French and supporting Spanish?
Potentially, I think that is a reality.
And how many students?
So we are currently at, I believe it was 16, not, class sizes, average class size over the last 7 years in French has been about 11 students. That excludes the 2021 school year. For Spanish, it has been 14.
And what are you proposing in this? I guess I'm finding a little.
So one thought is if you did a half, and I want to commend our world language teachers. They have been critical in doing what we call micro assignments.
Yep.
Family and consumer science, history. They have been very receptive to looking at different opportunities to support learning within the building and having a full teaching load. So one thought is if you went to 2.5, you could have one of the languages could be potentially like you would have basically 3 sections in a year. Maybe the spring section is the beginning language, whether Spanish 1 or French 1. And then in the fall, you could offer French 1B and French 2 or Spanish 1B, Spanish 2. So there's different ways of looking at that. It's a way of being able to provide 2 languages with at least to a beginning level. And then after that, there could be opportunities through our connection with Molten Borough or VLAX. There are more options today than there were years ago. But the class sizes over time, when you are feeling the need to look at things from a fiscal standpoint, from a programming standpoint, it's certainly, I'd say, one of the strengths that NEASC on is the level of opportunities that students have given our size. Maybe it's helpful to talk about world cultures, maybe thinking about all of this as a whole. We do have world cultures at the elementary level, both in Sandwich and Interlakes Elementary. A few years ago, it had been Spanish, and we had transitioned it to world cultures. And we had proposed reducing Spanish at the elementary level. There was feedback from the public during the public hearing part of the budget that families really valued the opportunities for children to learn about diverse cultures and having a greater exposure to the world beyond their own community. So that was something that after the public hearing, the board did put it back with it changing from Spanish to world cultures to really, I think, reflect what the community was seeking and what we felt was also something we could do better from a curriculum standpoint. It was hard, finding a Spanish teacher at level was difficult. And it was once a week was such an exposure piece that it made sense. The opportunities for learning.
World Cultures is a once a week
It's
special.
a once a week special. And I'll want to make sure I'm capturing that correctly.
That is correct.
And so this would eliminate world cultures at the elementary level in SES and also.
And ILES.
Yes.
um,
So the world cultures right now touches every elementary student. So I think that's a way to think about it. There's contact with every elementary students through world cultures.
I would just make the case, it is a rich part of our curriculum. It exposes children in relatively small communities to a broader world, and it is something that it would be sad to see it go. And I think I would say the same things about a broader world language program too. I mean, this is where, for me personally, this is starting to get into bone.
Yeah, I agree.
And that if we can't do this, then that speaks to a crisis of our funding that is really profound. And I don't know if we're there yet or if we will be in the future, but this is where we, start changing the way kids are educated in our district in a really noticeable way.
Let's find out. I'll put a motion on the table to retain world culture at the elementary schools.
To retain.
To retain it, yeah, I second that.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Are there other ways to accomplish the same ends? I mean, I have not worked in elementary schools, but I worked in a K-12 school, and the elementary teachers had incorporated world cultures into their social studies and language curricula and library curriculum and, things like that. So my question is, and I guess this is maybe, I don't know, for the principals, and is this something that's possible to achieve that end? Maybe in a richer way than a once a week exposure, I don't know.
I don't know if Mr. Holger or.
I think off the cuff, when we adopted the world cultures model, that was part of the discussion, was that things would also be integrated in the classrooms.
Right.
And I do think the elementary school teachers try to do a good job of bringing those things in. Where I would pause is, I feel like elementary instruction is becoming more and more prescriptive and based on literacy instruction at a level that is more complex. I'm not sure I would want to say that we could safely add that and get the same result that we're getting from a world cultures experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a lot, the elementary school teachers are trying to juggle a lot, and I'm not sure that we can handle the same experience with fidelity, considering the other things that are on the plate.
As I recall the conversation when the program was developed, it was a response to eliminating Spanish in the elementary school, and that was not functioning in a way that we wanted, and that this was a way of bringing additional depth and richness to the curriculum of these children. And that was a major part of the conversation, was could this be done? Could we bring in a world culture component to instruction in other ways? And there was, both from the parents, as I recall, and the faculty, and I remember going to some listening sessions about that. There was real reluctance to say we can just downshift this into the elementary school, into the homeroom, while they're trying to achieve measurable data-driven results with
Elementary
literacy and
classroom
numeracy.
teachers have an
A lot on their
immense,
plate.
a number of responsibilities. It's incredible.
And as a parent, I've enjoyed hearing my children bring back what they learned. I think there is something really important about cultural exposure. Having to buy jackfruit so that they can try it.
Might it be helpful to get where we are right now with what's been approved without?
That would help.
So you're at 3.99.
And I do feel, I hold it near and dear. I think they've done an amazing job. It is here because it is not a requirement. And we are getting, looking close to the bone. So.
Can I ask you to discuss a little bit more what's on the table with the world languages? I guess I don't quite follow how much the saving. So with what you've got in these two line items, you would anticipate being able to offer both introductory Spanish and French and
So,
intermediate level Spanish.
correct. So line 23, so the reduction is $64,038. So that is half of a teacher.
Yep.
And so that would allow 3 teaching sections in a year.
Of how many students on there? Is that
Well, that would
11 in
depend on the
14?
students, so
But
our average class, what I would
What
say
is the
is, I think we have 21 scheduled for French 1 in grade 8 this spring.
Yeah, I think it's right around 20.
So there's 21 students in French 1 this spring,
wow,
which is a healthy number. Our Spanish numbers
At 25, for 8th grade.
for 8th grade.
Spanish one.
So, you start to think about that as, you hope that if they're taking 1A to start with, they're gonna go to 1B. I think, it is, we're in a position just trying to bring ideas forward. I think in the short future, there may be natural attrition points, and maybe it's, an opportunity to wait for that. But with a half, you could at least continue to offer, if you have 2.5, there is still opportunity to support the micro assignments and to teach, I'll say French 1A, French 1B, and French 2, that, with 3 sections.
Do most schools, I want to ask this question, do most schools, I've always thought that languages started in the middle and the high school. So the world culture that we're talking about, the elementary schools, do a lot of schools offer that?
So world cultures, I would say at the elementary level, I think that is something that is unique to Interlakes, having that position. I think that is, I think places would like that. I think they don't necessarily have that opportunity. It is, something that you might consider a strength in terms of a more robust programming that you're able to offer.
There are schools that incorporate it into.
Right.
That's
That's yeah.
curriculum.
but also that elementary school world cultural component is the least replicable through remote learning and other things that high school students trying to go further in French and Spanish can avail themselves in a way that they couldn't before. Exposing young children to a variety of cultures in a focused way is a different matter, and there's no way that we can offer to all the children that kind of programming.
It's difficult. I think
Yeah,
this is very
okay,
difficult.
yeah,
It's a
of course.
very, obviously, everything's difficult, but this
Yeah.
is, I understand where everybody's coming from.
And
I'm
I-
just
and I-
pointing out that most school districts don't offer that in elementary. They offer it in the middle and the high.
And I should say in my experience, I certainly haven't surveyed everybody, but I just sharing what my experience has been.
So if I'm still trying to wrap my head around the reductions, so you've got 25 students
In Spanish
signed up for
and
Spanish
21 in
1, how many
French.
sections is that?
Well, again, ideally, that could be one.
One section, okay, and the French could be one section.
It is.
And so and how many sections does a full-time teacher teach?
6.
Okay,
And we do include, again, those micro assignments, so people
Right.
have been teaching full loads.
so if you reduced these by half, would you be
It's reducing a position,
a
right?
position by half? So that teacher's 6 sections
Would become 3.
would become 3.
Okay. But the other
Would the
language-
micro assignments go, or but
We
you'd
would still be able to support the micro
support
assignment.
that, so, and if you did both of these, you'd end up with one full-time position, but you probably don't have somebody teaching both Spanish and French, right?
I think
Who can
you would
flex
want
on
to
those
look,
sections.
again, there's gaining kind of, having fuller class sizes rather than
Right.
running, having to bring to the board, trying to run sections that are well below 10.
Mhm.
Ashley, where are we at again?
Currently,
You were at
3.99.
3.99.
We're at three point
almost
nine nine.
just about essentially 4.
Is there a number that the board, Mary?
I just wanted to let you know that the French number for is 16, not 21.
Oh, okay,
It's
thank
16.
you. My
Yes.
apologies.
Okay, so I think we have a motion
We have a motion on
to
world
retain
culture.
world cultures,
Right.
which would be G. And that's for the elementary across the board.
World cultures at the elementary
So I
level.
think we kind of discussed what we can discuss, right, guys? I mean,
Yep.
so I think we're ready to vote. The
To
vote,
retain.
the motion is to retain.
Can I
So,
ask one more question?
go ahead,
I
Craig.
guess how much programming time you spend on world cultures? How much time do you spend with
Once a
developing that
week.
world culture program?
So, you're asking, sorry.
Yes.
I worked, when Judy Bird first joined, who's the teacher in the position, she and I worked closely to build her competencies.
Yeah.
So that they aligned and acted as a bridge between, something that didn't exist and then, where the students were meeting the programming at the 7th grade level. And so, she's done a phenomenal job at, continuing to build a program and expose the students to,
So it's self-running right now.
absolutely.
And this is one teacher who goes between the 2 elementary schools.
No,
So we've got 2 world cultures teachers.
Dr.
Well,
DeSori, who's here this
Aha.
evening, is the world cultures teacher
I've
at
got
Sandwich Central.
1.2.
Yeah. I'm the-
Oh,
At
you
point
do that too.
Okay.
So that's at
It's a one day.
3.99 with all lines considered.
It's
Today.
3.99 without the world language, half, world language, half teacher again, and then world culture 1.2. You're at 3.99, like a 4% budget.
And we still have to talk about summer school. right?
But we have to vote on the
Yeah, we still have
motion.
to
Yeah, we
talk
gotta
about
vote on the
some,
motion.
but the motion is world culture to retain it. That's on the
It's
table.
been motioned and seconded.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So would it be helpful, I think what you were gonna start to say, Mary, if the board said, what's a number you wanna live with? What's our goal? You've just kind of,
Right, and I
you
think
just
that would
presented
help
what
us to
changed.
maybe go back between now and Tuesday
because I feel
and
like there's a
say,
lot of
maybe there's,
nuance things.
if it's not quite trying to get to
Yeah.
3, then there's a little opportunity to
I mean,
maybe see if there's other ways we can skim off of places.
So I personally would like to get to 3.
I would
Because
too.
we don't really usually go over 3 ever. And so I think this is
That's-
gonna be hard for people to swallow. So,
It's
given
gonna be
the
hard to get
situation right now with the taxes. So, that's what I would like to see, but
I'll take the other side of it.
ultimately, it's up to the people to
It
vote
is,
on this.
there's no question about it.
Ultimately, it's up to them, but they need to hear our discussion tonight, and they need to know what's on the table. And it's, we can only do so much. We have to present this to the taxpayers.
I think Mary would agree that we had a conversation a long time ago, 6, 12 months. But the picture was really starting to get clear, and I said, Mary, you're looking at a 10 to stay at the current level. I think if we can stay at 4 or less, we have done a yeoman's job when we look at how we budget and what we have. What you're doing in student services is, for a rural town school system, I would suggest is unprecedented, but absolutely necessary. I mean, the move between do we build it or do we buy it is in every decision that involves the changing of money. So I think 4 would be my cap. I understand people are concerned, but it's the world. 93% of our budget is people, direct employed or employed. And with the contracts that we signed with the teachers last year and the support staff this year, we're looking at and recognizing that our teachers have fallen behind over the 3 years of the contract that is just coming off. Or in the case of the Education Association last year, they started in June. So we put in COLAs of 4 and 5. just to get them back to the purchasing power that they had 3 years ago. And when you're doing that, and with the natural escalation of all other costs, materials, transportation, healthcare, I would be very proud if we beat 4 or were at 4 or less.
I appreciate that, Mark.
I would agree with Mr. Billings as well. I think 4% with all the challenges we have, hearing input about, we have, what we've done to date, everybody's feeling a little bit of pain. And we had talked about trying to avoid programming at all costs, sort of like, as I recall, a couple months ago, that was the thing we wanted to touch last. I think it's reasonable for where we're at.
Ultimately, it's not our decision, it's the taxpayers,
Yep.
so. we
And
can-
maybe we'll go through the budget hearing and get input, and
Well, we still, yeah,
at least this gives us some dry powder.
Exactly.
So what we can do is, all of these need to get put into Munis, the ones that you have supported this evening, and bring that back on Tuesday. And I think that's an opportunity then to, look at things again.
so we're not gonna, so let's not look at the rest of this then, so we're only, so we're.
We did
just
them all.
No, we didn't
No, no.
do, we did not do them all, we didn't do summer school, we're leaving that, and we're
And
leaving
the world
world language.
Because we're at
world
399.
culture. Because that's what I'm saying.
If the rest of the
That's what I'm
board
saying.
agrees with that.
If the rest of the board agrees.
Do you want a motion to that?
Well,
I think maybe it's
I feel like, we need to go lower, that's my feeling, especially,
whatever.
The
I think I agree
response
with
from
you,
the
Lisa,
taxpayers,
but
but-
the last couple, I mean, summer school.
well, maybe she
it's
can
like-
find something
yeah, no.
else,
That's
is what I'm saying,
what I'm
maybe she
trying
can find
to-
something
if I
else that
can
might
look at the
not.
budget again, this will give us an opportunity, we'll have fresh numbers.
I prefer,
There may be opportunities that we can look at in a different way and maybe
So-
bring that 3.99 down just a bit, but without having to forego programming.
I would just say, looking a little bit further into this, summer school is a tough one to contemplate.
I
And
understand that.
That's the one of all of these that is the reddest of the red flags.
So I have a question, on the field experiences, is there any other, I mean, I like field experiences,
So we do
but-
have a
so-
breakdown of our field
see
experiences.
that?
Why don't we pass that out so you have a chance to look at that?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's,
because that would be nice if everybody went to all these trips, but I'd rather retain. what we
summer
have.
school
Yes.
Oh, I think
versus field experiences.
Thank
I'll get that.
I figured.
I'm struggling with something because I think, for example, in the area of the languages, right? You've named some ways that we could phase something out or shrink the program and allow for. Are there other areas where we can look down and look more broadly at some of these things we had? It's been built over many, many years, but for the size of our school, I've said that before, so that's what I'm struggling with. And I just don't know if there's, I'm sure you've been thinking, you've all been thinking
We've
about
done a
these
lot of
things.
thinking.
I know.
One of the things that, and I do want to say it publicly, is, so again, for 7th grade, incoming 7th grade, our current 6th grade, which is the class that we've been trying to, support in many ways. What I plan to do is move a teacher from the elementary level. And our plan is to move a high school teacher in math to 7th grade. And that would create a 7th grade team. We'd have one who would do math science and one who would do ELA and social studies. That would create 6 sections for us to break the class up over. It will allow for greater opportunities to differentiate learning experiences. And so one of the things by doing that, We have some other individuals, some other teachers who hold multiple certifications who could pick up some of those high school math classes, but still offering programming in other areas. So we're trying to maximize.
Yeah.
So rather than adding 2 positions to support that 7th grade group, we're looking at how we reorganize and how that might, maybe there's courses that won't run, particularly like in STEAM, because we're teaching a math section instead of something that is STEAM related. So we've tried to look at those opportunities.
Great.
So these are all of the field experiences.
I have a question. So is there a way on Mara Vista, and I feel that that's an important trip where we integrate the kids from the Sandwich to go into the middle tier. I get that. And I think it's wonderful, but it's expensive. I'm wondering if we could do like a trip and they have an overnight, maybe the Squam Lakes Association usually does for their camp. They have like an overnight because they have cabins on, I think, one of the islands. I'm not sure which one, because, I know all the islands on Woodstocky.
It's Moon.
A lot of them. Is it Moon? I thought it was Moon, but I didn't want to say Moon. So I was wondering if we could do something like that, Mary, and that would save us a lot of money in transportation, and if we worked with the SLA on that, that could work. I mean, it wouldn't, it's still in the Lakes region, it's only down the street. It's not.
I imagine, so one of the, the Mara Vista has counselors who do a lot of programming. So I would imagine the Swan Lake Association, there would be fees attached with that. is what
Right,
I'm
but it's
thinking.
just
So
down the street as opposed to going
So
all the way.
it could potentially save on transportation. One of the things, though, that we do have our Laker activity vehicle. And I want to thank Mr. Heyman has done a lot of driving. I don't know if anybody else has done that, but Mr. Heyman, I think, was our first. He was our first. He piloted the first trip, I believe. We do have, this evening feels a lot like all the things that we're losing in the budget. There are a number of things in the budget. One is we are proposing 2 leases for 2 additional Laker activity vehicles. That could potentially save some savings going to Mara Vista, because if we have 3 buses, well, that would take about 45 kids. We might save one
bus.
a bus or maybe not. What I would say is Mara Vista is such a well-established, it is, our
Tradition.
teachers are so integrated into that it would be very, very sad to
I
see
know,
that go.
I'm not, I'm just saying maybe a different one until we can get through this crisis.
I would be concerned with that specific idea that bringing in new programming, I think, has costs associated with it. I think the SLA does great things, and I'm not sure that would get us there, but that's something that we could spend.
I'd rather have summer schools than.
Well, no.
I mean, if it's, if we're
Well, I
looking
mean,
at
I think
all
all of
items.
these field experiences are incredibly rich and
I know they are.
important, and they are something that our community spends an enormous amount of money to
It's
do.
part, I like to refer, it's part of our tapestry, like.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The New York City trip, we had hoped to be able to move to the high school level because it matches very well with the high school level curriculum. But that was $50,000. And so we took that plus transportation. We decided not to pursue that at this time. My hope is someday that will get built in. So that's in addition to the Boston trip. But I think right now is not the time, and it's not established yet. So it's easy to let go of something that's not established. What I might recommend to the board, if you could give us an opportunity to do a little bit more work between now and Tuesday.
Why don't we do that? This is
And
getting
see what
too
we
difficult.
can, it's.
It's our job to give the administration a budget number and
Well, I
let
said
the
3.
administration work out
Right.
so I'm gonna make a motion so it's official. I would like to, the administration to get 4% or less they get.
So we're already at.
We're
already at
399.
399.
There you go. And
I'll second.
but Mary has heard that we'd like to go lower.
Okay, so, and, but maybe for things that are, again, if, we tried to take all those things out that have less of an impact, but we will go through with fresh eyes and fresh, dollar amounts.
Good.
All right. Is there a second?
I think, I would just say, this list, every line item here is a rich, important
I
experience.
agree with
And
that.
it may not be that every line item is something that these communities can afford. And I'm incredibly supportive of the idea of field experiences, but there are a lot of big numbers on this.
Very good.
And if we're really having a serious conversation about summer school, then things like the Cape Cod experience, no matter how rich it is, have to be on the table.
I know.
And I think that that's something that we have to think about. And literally, every one of these, we can justify. It's just, do our taxpayers support it? And
Right.
that's the question.
I think Dr. Downing has a.
To speak to that, I think when I was brought on board 3 years ago, what part of that discussion was, how do you feel about doing overnight trips with middle schoolers?
Right, yeah.
And I'd never been asked that question as an administrator. I would say that those trips are a fiber of who we are. And I understand that in a charged budget, that those typically are the first thing to get a chop, but I wouldn't speak up if I didn't think that those are something, they are programming in my mind, and have really become a fiber of who we are. And I think that would be a big loss to us, especially considering that the kids have lost New York already through no fault of anybody's own, but through the COVID experience. That's a field experience they haven't gotten back, and that would be a shame. And that's coming from somebody who sleeps in the cabin for 3 nights and does all the field experience stuff with the kids. So
All right, well, we had somebody make a motion.
Charlie made the motion.
3.99, is there a second?
Second here.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Okay.
Two opposed.
Now,
There is an addendum.
I wish it were lower. I'm
Right.
abstaining.
yeah,
Lisa.
I would, no, we said to examine to look lower than 399, not to keep 399.
To keep, this was our
No,
charge
no, I
to Mary to
understand
go.
that, but that implies that we'd be comfortable with 399.
I'm not really
Not
comfortable with
feeling that
399
way, so-
either, so maybe I should abstain from the comment as well.
But I'm abstaining, I'm not.
All right, all those
Sorry,
in-
I didn't get the vote. Sorry, can you do that?
Well, that's what
We do
happened.
the vote.
Let's
Siobhan,
redo the vote.
I'm sorry.
you were aye,
I'm I.
then it's 5-2.
I'm
Okay,
abstaining.
thank you, that's what I thought.
4-3.
4-3?
Three?
Are you abstaining too or
No,
no?
I'm saying go for it.
You're
Yes.
saying go for it. So
Or
4
for
to 3?
399 or less.
Or less.
Or less.
All right, so anyway, let's, is there any question, has anybody from the public have any questions thus far? This is a lot to absorb.
I have nothing online.
They're just enjoying the show.
Yes.
I'd love to comment. Yeah, my name's Michael Moore, and 2 hats, taxpayer, but also a teacher here at the elementary school.
Yeah.
I'm most concerned, I think, in the acceptance of, I have a lot of notes here. But really dealing with the paraprofessional cuts of the 9 positions. I understand the logic, or part of the logic behind it, that they haven't been filled since COVID. And I don't know how much the Bill White contracted services is replacing some of those filled positions. But I know that there is a lot of hats that our paras wear within the elementary school. So ideally, and this is me as a taxpayer and with kids in the system and that have graduated, ideally the school works best when there are as many caring hands with the students. When paras have that time, that space to be able to take 2 or 3 individuals and work with them very deliberately to increase the depth of the education that they're receiving in the classroom, whether that is to push them into the library and to read with them, or to be an extra hand to even just walk and help with a social emotional issue that would distract or derail the teaching of the classroom that the other students are receiving. So it's invaluable to have, ideally, as many paras that are possible, additional ones within each classroom. I know that's not always the case. I know that those positions have been open and there are not the applicants there. Cutting those positions and no longer advertising for those positions means we are allowing or we're accepting the status quo of what we're currently are doing, which I, as a teacher, know is extremely stressful. And it is incredibly hard to search and try to find somebody only to find that they're covering a position due to a substitute shortage, or that there just are not extra hands, they are covering other duties and no longer available. I am very happy that you decided to keep that world culture position, because I know that as much as teaching world cultures is part of it, but that is also a teacher who's forming bonds with students and is also available at bus times and lunch supervision and hallway supervisions, and has that is another voice for contacting parents and being able to provide insight, to help within the classroom what needs to happen. But I'm super concerned to say, hey, just because we haven't filled these and we are still surviving as a school, doesn't mean that we are thriving as a school. And I think I really am just, it is difficult to see a very quick acceptance of that cut. And I really, as a taxpayer, really want you as a school board and administration to really be aware that removing those talented individuals, or that possibility of having 9 talented individuals within that school, really begins to, I think, actually is cutting into the bone, if that's the analogy. I'm very happy that you are not looking at removing world cultures, and that is there, and as well as the world language teachers up at the high school. I think whether it's 16 or 10 kids or 5 kids within a classroom that are seniors, they're forming such a strong bond. Those could be 5 kids that are looking to pursue French as a college degree or study abroad. And how about them being in Paris and talking with somebody and saying, where are you from? And them saying Interlace Elementary School or Interlace High School. We're coming. I know numbers don't always equal what happens, the magic in the classroom. But I know that magic in the classroom means a heck of a lot more than sometimes a little increase on my tax bill. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comments?
Hi, Laura Carney. I just have a clarifying question. You didn't specifically vote on anything for the summer school and the world
No, we're not.
language.
Right,
So
we're at
just-
3.99 without those cuts
So-
right now. We're gonna.
It's just interesting that everything else was given a vote, including the world cultures to stay, but then just those two, we don't know if there's, I'm not sure.
We're
what it is.
gonna, I think the point was that we're gonna review other options because we felt that those are too important. That's,
I would
We'll be
agree
back
with
at
that
budget work
interpretation.
session.
that was my
Tuesday night.
interpretation.
So those aren't getting a yes vote.
We don't
We don't need to vote on it.
We
I
want
think
people
we
to
are.
go back and look for other ways besides these things.
Yeah, we
Because
don't like
those
these
did feel
things.
like,
Those-
there's, cutting summer school for elementary school kids, just, that
It
is
doesn't
bone
feel
to me
right.
for sure. And reducing the number of languages, that takes time. We've got kids in that pipeline, so we can't just say this is this cut for this year. If we wanted to do that, that's that's a broader conversation that I'd love to hear the principals talk about it. But right now, I think we're saying, at least I would be saying, let's hold on those and see if we can cut in see if there are other options.
Right.
So the board has a meeting scheduled for Tuesday night.
Okay.
So there's,
So when I leave here tonight, I can feel that summer school, world language, and world cultures are all in the same
Kind of,
situation.
yeah, they're in the.
Even though
yes.
the others didn't get an actual vote.
Right, exactly.
So the
Hang
board will need to make a vote of what budget they want to bring forward to the budget hearing, which is on not September, February 7th. So on Tuesday night, that's our hope, is that you'll be in a position to make that decision. So that then would go to the public hearing. The board uses that as an opportunity to listen, to hear what people are saying. And then the board would consider what they've heard and take that into consideration to make a motion and approve a motion to bring forward to the annual school district meeting. So this is still very early in the process.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Is what I'm trying to convey.
Okay. If there's no other public comments, I'd like to.
I just let you know you have some other business.
No, I know
Yeah.
that, but I want to close the public comments at 6:44. And there'll be another opportunity Tuesday night for people as well.
And the budget hearing.
Yes.
Lisa, can I-
Yes, go
can I
ahead.
ask you? I guess, I think we need to challenge ourselves strategically. I know we started a strategic plan for the school system, but I feel that this budgetary constraint will not leave us in a year, right? And I think we have to understand that these budget meetings, good as they are or negative as they are, you know, we need better information, I guess, over time, right? And how we draw down these budgets over a number of years, instead of going year by year, right? Digitalization will change this world. AI will change this world. And we need to understand what that will change in the school. Will it still be brick and mortar? Do I need all the brick and mortar, or will we be able to teach more online and do more of that and take advantage of languages and cultures, you know, that's offered online and through the computer? Maybe not as touchy-feely, but, you know, that's where a lot of colleges are going. You go to college campus now, half the classes you don't have to go to, right? It's all online. So we have to understand what we need to do in this community to see if that will assist us, right, with the budgets. So I think we all need to take a look at how that's gonna happen over the future years as we develop this strat plan and what that impacts to buildings, programming, and how we get extra access, right?
I think COVID and everything that we saw happen through digitalizing classrooms gave us all the evidence that we need to know that right now we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Particularly the mental health and emotional, social connections with people, that's not gonna change. I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think even I could confidently say in 20 years, we're still, we're gonna need those, the brick and mortar.
There's
It's
all
so
these
important.
complexes, but we have to take a look at that, right? And understand how that will maybe assist us as we go.
One of the things we have been doing is at natural attrition points, trying to, look at our enrollment and look at, is that a point to change in terms of the number of staffing we have based on our enrollment. Last spring, we had a resignation in grade 1. Based on enrollment, we chose not to fill that position. So that is reflected in this budget. We are one less without, again, somebody potentially not having a position. It was one that we didn't fill, so it provided that room in the budget to absorb some of the additional costs. But those are critical things when we do have natural attrition, to make sure that we're making a very mindful decision if that's what we need, to continue with, or do we need to do it differently?
Yeah.
But AI it's happening rapidly, and it is certainly needs to be part of how we look to the future.
And it's not gonna cut our costs. To understand and use it appropriately is gonna cost us money. We all said, we're gonna cut our costs on using paper.
Are you making fun of me?
No. But the driver of these budgets are salaries and benefits. You said 93%, that sounds really high.
It includes contracted services.
Which are
Actual
people
salaries and
business.
benefits are
We're in the
71.
people business.
We've added contracted services in a big way, but that's where and our population just, we pay our employees well, right? And the size of our population, the number of salaries we have, the number of FTEs and employees we have provides this incredibly rich program for our kids. And those FTEs are related to program, but like Mary said, if we can gradually reduce FTEs without, we've got a situation in languages where we may have to decide not to continue and to let kids do VLAX or whatever for the upper years in languages, and we could reduce that way. But that's the crunch point. It's the number of employees versus the number of kids in the system. And we've got low numbers on this side and high numbers on that side. And it's allowed us, because our taxpayers approve these budgets year after year, to provide this really, really rich environment that may not last. And it would behoove us, I think you're right, Craig, to look down that road and say, what are we willing to phase out or reduce or, whatever. Anyway, I think those are the drivers. Those are the things that as a board we need to be most concerned about.
Looks like Dr. Downing.
I'm sorry, if you're getting tired of me speaking, feel free to say.
I feel the same way. but
I
me
think
speaking.
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I've heard that a few times over the last few years, but I think we also have to keep our eyes on the focus that while I know the numbers may not look the way that people want them to look, the intensity of need of our students is unprecedented. And to think that a classroom teacher can run a classroom the same way that they could even 10 years ago without lower numbers and the support, it is impossible if you do want to provide that rich programming on top of a safe, productive, and healthy environment for teachers and kids. So I totally understand that from a budgetary standpoint, but that piece, it's super important when we're dealing with the increasing needs of our kids from academic, social, emotional, and mental health. It's a trifecta that is creating a perfect storm inside
I
the
don't
classroom.
disagree. I don't disagree.
Yeah, none
with
of
that.
us disagree with that. And
It's just, these are, the richness of this curriculum, the number of courses we offer, you could reduce the number of teachers and still have the services, et cetera, that you want, the supports for students. If we don't have to do that, it'd be lovely, right? And we'll see. I mean, and maybe we ought to keep it at 3.99 and see what the taxpayers say. Because we've been saying for a long time, this is gonna be a crisis year, and it doesn't happen, so who knows? But
Again, I think Mary's heard the message, to see what we can do.
We will
You
bring
can go
back
over a
some,
budget 5 times, and on that 6th run through, you might say, you're absolutely right.
some fresh numbers will go up.
So we have new business, you said?
We do, we have an addendum, which I don't think I have, so let's see. I think I didn't get out to you.
No, we need them.
One of them is, this one is not. Okay. And this is to approve minutes and the donations. No, it's, you know what, I had all these
No, I know, it's confusing.
papers that I got myself.
I thought we were going into non-public.
We do have that as well.
I didn't last one. Okay. Under new business, the minutes.
So moved.
The minutes of January 9th, regular school board meeting, moved by Charlie,
Second.
seconded by Mark. Any corrections to the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
December 12th, non-public session meeting minutes. This is attachment 2.
So moved.
Okay,
Seconded.
second, Duncan seconds it?
Yes.
All those in favor of approving those?
Aye.
Aye. Donations, motion to accept the following donations with gratitude. These funds will be applied solely to the Student Activities Robotics Club and used specifically for future robotics activities.
So moved.
Well, want me to say them? Rick's Wyatt Auxiliary in the amount of $500 and Granite Beach Management LLC in the amount of $500.
With gratitude.
With gratitude,
Seconded.
Mark, and then Duncan, all those in favor?
Aye.
To be used to help pay for the Alpine Ski Team race fees, practice fees, and equipment needed for the season, attachment 4. And it's donation from the Interlinks PTO in the amount of $1,000. Is there a motion?
So moved with
Charlie?
gratitude.
Second,
Charlie
gratitude.
and Mark with gratitude, all those in favor?
Aye.
What grade is this for? What grades are participating in the ski?
The Alpine is 9 to 12.
5 to 12, okay, thank you.
Okay. Is that, okay, now I'm going into non-public. Okay? I need a
Did
motion.
you close public comment?
Yeah, I did, I posted at 6:44 PM.
There's plenty of sandwiches. Please take a sandwich.
You wanna borrow my bag?
No, I will.
Anybody get some boys in college?
The cookies look really good.
Okay, so I haven't stopped the recording.
Okay, let's go for non-public.
No, let's recess.
No, why don't you- I don't know if I can end the recording if you're not.
I think yes, you can just say the reason that you will be back in non-public.
Okay, cool. Thank
Do you
you.
want me to do that? Did you hear?
Video's not required.
And no one's here, so, anymore.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you.
No, thank you.
Watch this.
Yeah, no, sorry.